Welcome to Organize to Lead. This is Unit 2 in the training series, Being the Best Community Action Board. Board members contribute valuable time and expertise. The organization needs to support the most efficient use of that time and talent. We are going to look at three elements that are important for board effectiveness. Bylaws define how the board is structured. Meetings are where the board conducts its business, and records are the basis for a board's institutional memory.
Bylaws are an organizational constitution. Bylaws define how a board is organized and what it has the power to do. A nonprofit corporation board creates its own bylaws. A public advisory committee or board operates on bylaws created by a government body, much like a city council or a county board. Bylaws contain articles or sections that describe the organization's purpose and mission, the geographic area served by the organization, the qualifications for board membership, and any conditions or procedures for member selection, the officers that will direct the board, and any committees responsible for specific areas of the board's business. Other articles in the bylaws set out the legal powers of the board and list the powers the board delegates to the executive. Frequently, the last two articles explain how to amend the bylaws and how to dispose of the organization's assets should the organization close.
Let's look at some of these topics in a little more detail. Board members are the subject of the first three questions in Information Memorandum 82. The requirement that the board of a CSBG-funded entity have three types of members is the most widely recognized CSBG requirement. The memorandum discusses several questions about board member selection. It points out that the law states that member selection is done by the entity. This suggests that although the board may ask other organizations to nominate members, the decision to accept and seat them belongs to the board. The basic CSBG requirement should be included in the bylaws. More specific procedures for member recruiting and selection might be better placed in a separate board procedure. This would keep bylaws simple. It would also be easier to revise selection procedures outside of the bylaws. City and county governments already have procedures for placing a person on advisory boards and committees.
The memorandum points out that the CSBG law says nothing about board member term limits. Agencies have to balance the benefits of experience and continuity with benefits of bringing new faces and perspectives onto the board. Community action boards elect the same officers as most of our civic organizations. A presiding officer, commonly called a board chair or board president, runs meetings and represents the organization. A vice chair or vice president acts in the absence of the chairperson. A secretary serves as the official records keeper for the board, and a treasurer has responsibility for organizational assets.
Committees enable a board to divide up its business so that the board as a whole doesn't have to consider all matters. Committees can have detailed discussions of a small amount of board business. They can then recommend actions to the board with a summary of their analysis. An executive committee, composed of elected officers, can make decisions for the board between regular meetings. A finance and audit committee reviews accounting practices and financial reporting. In a private nonprofit, the committee also contracts for the annual audit of the organization's finances. City and county audits are often conducted by a state auditor's office. A personnel or human resources committee has responsibility for all employee-related business. That business ranges from hiring practices to employee conduct, the compensation plan, and fringe benefits package. A program committee reviews contracts and proposals for services, including their budgets. It also monitors program performance. A planning committee organizes the community assessment, strategic plan, and community action plan.
Some bylaws articles specify the powers of the board. That is, the nature of the business a board can legally conduct. Board powers include entering into contracts, receiving funds, securing funds in financial institutions and instruments, and settling the organization's debts. The board has authority to obtain bonding for board members and employees. It also contracts for the annual financial audit.
Meetings are the second element in board effectiveness. Official business can only take place in meetings that have been called as required in the bylaws and which are attended by a quorum of members as defined in the bylaws. Boards hold meetings of three different types. Regular meetings are held on a schedule established a year at a time. These meetings take place on a fixed day, such as the last Monday of the month or the third Thursday of the month. Regular board meetings are often scheduled every month. Some boards meet every other month or once a quarter. Other boards meet monthly with some stated exceptions, such as not meeting in August because of vacations, or meeting once for November and December to avoid holidays.
Special or emergency meetings are called to deal with urgent business that can't wait for the next regular meeting. Special meetings can only deal with one topic, which must be stated in the notice and agenda.
Both regular and special board meetings are likely to be subject to your state's open meetings law, if that law applies to community action agencies. The annual meeting is the occasion for the election of officers. Many CAAs use their annual meeting for a review of the year's accomplishments and to recognize community partners, successful families, and staff achievements. Some CAAs make their annual meeting a fundraising event.
Advanced preparation makes for better meetings. Useful preparations include distributing the agenda and materials in time for members to review them before the meeting, including written committee recommendations with the agenda, prepping the presiding officer on agenda items and how each item is to be handled.
The agenda should identify which of the three actions the board should take on each item. 1. Receive reports about what has happened since the last meeting. 2. Receive and discuss recommendations for future actions. And 3. Make decisions. That is, decide what is going to happen in the future. The presiding officer contributes to meeting effectiveness by clearly identifying each agenda item and how the board needs to handle it, by maintaining focus and order during discussions, and by engaging as many members as want to contribute.
CAA boards must deal with some meeting challenges. Urgent business may surface between the dates of the public notice and the board meeting. State open meetings law may dictate whether and how such topics can be considered. Lack of focus during meetings contributes to discussions that don't lead to a decision and ad-lib motions that are not clearly worded and may not be accurately recorded, and members feeling that their time is not being put to good use. An alternative, hold discussion only after a motion has been presented and seconded. The specific wording of a motion gives discussion focus. Written motions are the most effective. A board's time should be devoted to decisions. Committees are the best place for discussions, analysis, and expert input. Board members' expertise and experience is valuable in committees. Committees should recommend decisions to the board. Recommendations a board does not adopt should be referred back to committee.
The board should set its regular schedule and stick to it. Individuals should not be considered for membership if they cannot commit to the board's schedule. Board members' commitments are not limited to time spent in meetings. In rural areas, the time that members devote to travel to and from meetings often exceeds the time spent in meetings. So that low-income persons can be board members, considerations may need to be given to such issues as unpaid work time and possible job loss, transportation costs, and childcare. Internet-based teleconferencing is easy and inexpensive, but its use may be limited by open meetings laws.
The paper produced for board meetings is expensive to copy and expensive to mail. Committees reduce the number of board members for whom documents must be prepared. Staff should send board members abstracts and summaries. Original documents can be available at committee and board meetings. If most board members have internet access, materials can be put online on the agency's website.
An accurate historical record is the third element in board effectiveness. Minutes are the basis of a CAA's institutional memory. They are the official legal record of board actions and decisions. Minutes should be archived in a board book or file. For most CAAs, this takes the form of a 3-ring binder for each year.
A separate binder for each meeting might make sense. In addition to the minutes, a meeting archive should also include the public notice or notices announcing the meeting. These are needed to document compliance with open meeting requirements. Both the draft agenda sent with the notice and the actual meeting agenda. Materials distributed to members with the meeting notice, at the meeting, and after the meeting. And sign-in sheets for the board members, CAA staff, and guests who attended the meeting. The work of program monitors, auditors, and consultants is easier if all agendas and the approved minutes have a list of the materials received by the board and when they were distributed. It is also useful to know whether they were distributed as paper copies or electronic files.
Other information that makes researching board documents easier includes the sector board members belong to, the area they come from, and the organization they represent. Staff member titles, job titles, organizations, and contact information for guests.
State CSBG offices require grantees to send them up-to-date board rosters. They often provide the form on which they want specific board member information reported. A typical board roster contains member names, contact information, the sector represented, their current term, current office held, and current committee assignments. The board roster should contain a last revised on date when any information changed. Distributing the roster at board meetings is an opportunity for members to report any changed information and to learn more about other board members. Member files are needed to document member selection consistent with the CSBG Act requirements. File contents may be specified by your state CSBG office.
To recap, to be an effective leader of its community action program, the board needs to 1. Have bylaws that clearly describe how the board is organized and what it has the power to do. 2. Make all the preparations necessary to conduct an efficient board meeting. And 3. Maintain an up-to-date and accurate historical record. Thank you for your attention to being the best community action board and for your service on your CAA Board of Directors. In Unit 3, we will look at the CAA Board's responsibility for development and planning.